I know you trained with Al back in the very early days.
Hmm.
Um, how was Al as a trainer, and what are some of the kind of learnings you took away from him that you would apply in your career?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Al hadn't, Al had been, by the time I started training with Al, he had been already been around for 10 years, maybe. He started
Mm.
wrestling too. I went to him in 90, well, then 12 years. I went to him in 94. And, you know, I had a chance, like, when not only did I move out there to train with him, I lived in the school. It was
Wow.
this
Okay.
huge, it used to be a Masonic temple where, like, there was an auditorium where the ring was, wherever the Masons do, they had an auditorium there, which kind of looked like a miniature version of Manhattan Center where the early
Kind of
Raw
kind of
went in
puts
there.
ECW in perspective, doesn't it? Whatever happened at ECW is probably pales in comparison to what was happening in that temple back in the day.
Oh my God. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only speculate. But yeah, and there's like bedrooms and all. So I lived in the school. And the benefit of that was Al had a routine. He would have Monday night, a Monday class. I mean, sorry, morning class. He would have morning classes and evening classes because he would have, local kids, but then kids would come down from Canada, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. You had people coming from all over the place. So if your schedule was more towards training in the morning or training at night, you were covered. So I did both. I would do the morning sessions and the night sessions. So I was training twice a day and 5 days a week. And then if Al had a booking that weekend, we would take that day off. And I would go on the road trip with him to whatever show he was on. And I learned, I always say, I learned just as much in those car rides as I did of him going, all right, this is locking up. Okay, this is a headlock. Sitting in the car with Al for 2, 3 hours each way, talking about wrestling and going to watch him wrestle and watching him purposely work something into his match that night that he had trained me during the week to put it in proper perspective. I mean, what better way to learn than be shown something you talk about in the car ride, go watch the man wrestle, and then he does that thing. And on the ride back, to Ohio, he goes, "Do you notice anything about my match? Ah, the thing, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See how I worked that? And it was awesome, And the benefit about breaking in back then is there weren't any distractions. There's no cell phones. You go in a car right now, everybody's staring at their phone.
Mm.
Back then, we had to talk to each other.
Yeah.
You
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine talking to instead of texting the person across the room that you're in the same room with, you know, where you want to go to dinner, you could just go, "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" But back then we were forced to talk to each other in the car and bond and that's, another reason why, the ECW locker room was so special. We bonded, we weren't sitting there just staring at phones. We're in the room talking, joking, playing practical jokes or whatever. And but Al was an awesome trainer. I trained with him every morning, every evening, and I was with him for about a year. And he was getting me bookings for, Dan Severin,
Hmm.
who was one of his students, was running shows or running sold shows. Sabu started running shows, and they would all use Al's students. So I was working for Sabu, I was working for Dan Severin, and then uh, Mike Samples in Indianapolis called Al and, hey, go drive to Indiana to wrestle. But it got to be like a year, and I was like, hey, look, been here a year. It's good. I'm getting you all these bookings, but I think it's time for you to go back home and learn how to hustle and learn how to get your own bookings. Like,
Mm.
so I packed up my car, I moved back home. I would drive to Baltimore. I would drive to North Jersey. I would start driving everywhere, just showing up at shows. I would look at the newsletters. Okay, what's in the area? Show up with my bag. Alice, like, if you go to an event,
Wow.
leave your bag in the car. introduce yourself to everybody. Say, hey, I'm sure you got a full card. Anything comes up, I have my stuff in the car if you need anybody. And a lot of times that worked where I would go to work, you go to a Dennis Corluzzo show in New Jersey, and he'd be like, so and so stuck in traffic. Brian, go get your stuff. You're on your third match.
Amazing.
You just learn how to the hustle and work. And I would send out like press kits, so a VHS tape with a 8 by
Hmm.
10, this, that, and other thing, and just I did that for about a year and a half. Well, I was in the business a year and a half before I got into ECW, and then went to ECW, and things really kick-started off right there. But I owe all that to learning from Al. Al's that bridge between the old school and
Hmm.
the current wrestling. He's that bridge. He where in '82 he's working with all the old school stuff guys, and he broke in the old school way, and now he can still bring that knowledge to anybody breaking into the business now.
I think that's one of the things that's overlooked about Al by many people, because obviously, for people that have only kind of seen his kind of career on a bigger stage, he kind of first came into WWF probably around 1995 with the Avatar gimmick. But
Yeah.
long-standing veteran before that, was already training people, but broke into the business with the likes of Bobo Brazil. So, you know, such a such an incredible kind of tenure he'd had before he even got to the, I guess, the big dance.